Les fruits et légumes moches, the inglorious fruits and vegetables, starring the grotesque apple, the ridiculous potato, the hideous orange, the failed lemon, the disfigured eggplant, the ugly carrot, and the unfortunate clementine.
In recent years, French supermarkets rolled out sections for fruit and vegetables that had grown unconventionally. These items deviate from standard shapes and sizes. They reflect natural variation. Such produce is perfectly edible. Taste and nutrition remain intact. Nature does not always follow neat human expectations. Yet the human mind often recoils from the unfamiliar. Psychologists call this reaction neophobia. A very long time ago, an early life form randomly spawned with a fear of novelty. This fear turned out to be evolutionarily advantageous. Although conjoined twin carrots are completely safe to eat, unusual things, generally speaking, are better left alone. The act of actually eating peculiar fruits and vegetables is not just the victory of the rational mind over the intuitive mind. It is an act of gratuitous violence against the intuitive mind. It is dancing a little jig on the grave of the intuitive mind. It is very French indeed. German supermarkets address the same issue differently. They process unconventional vegetables into soup. The mixture integrates variation. Shoppers avoid direct confrontation with the unfamiliar. These practical solutions point to a deeper pattern. The French approach to the weird fruit problem exalts the rational mind. The German approach belies a deep reverence for intuition. This video essentially is about truth. I have established two possible sources of truth. One is the rational mind, the other is the intuitive mind. What do I actually mean by that? Let me demonstrate something for you. I'm going to play 3 notes. The first, the second, and the third. Now what you notice about these notes is they're all exactly the same, just shifted 1 octave higher each. The perceptual experience of this is linear. The distance between a note and its higher octave is no different from a note and its lower octave. But let's take a deeper look at what's actually happening here. Here's the first note that I played. This is the full length of this string vibrating. What we're going to do now is we're going to cut off the string at exactly halfway. What's happening in the world of physics is that these strings are vibrating at double the frequency of the previous octave. If we were to create a chart and lay down 2 curves, one representing the tone that we hear and one representing the frequency of the vibrations being played, we could not get those lines to overlap. That is because the line representing tone is linear and the line representing frequency is exponential. The question I ask you now is, which of these lines is more true? Is the experience of hearing sound a useful map that gives us insights into the deeper reality properly expressed by the language of physics? Or is the rational language of physics a useful map which gives us deeper insight into the truth of intuitive experience? The Iliad has a peculiar quality to it. Characters act, speak, and suffer but there is no clear inner self narrating their experience. In the 1960s, the psychologist and classicist Julian Jaynes was reading the Iliad when he was confronted by a peculiarity that many notice when reading the ancient text. There is a noticeable cognitive disconnect in the way that the characters of the book experience motivation. Characters in the Iliad are motivated by commandments from Zeus or Athena. Ultimately, it is the will of the gods that drives their behavior. What is missing from the Iliad is any character's sense of self. The I, me, as a singular motivating influence over the behavior of my body. Around 3,000 years ago, human consciousness changed. The modern sense of self emerged. Before this shift, Jaynes argued the mind was bicameral. One part generated voices experienced as divine commands, the other obeyed. There was no unified inner I, reflecting on its own thoughts. This period coincides with the rise of new kinds of gods. Marduk in Babylon, Yahweh in the Hebrew tradition, Ahura Mazda in ancient Iran. Each represents something different from earlier deities, a supreme, all-knowing, ordering force. I'm conscious of the fact that on this channel so far it's been all Marduk this and Yahweh that, and still no mention of Ahura Mazda. What about the supreme deity of Zoroastrianism? One of the earliest and clearest expressions of ethical monotheism appeared in ancient Iran. The prophet Zarathustra taught that Ahura Mazda, the wise lord, was the one supreme god of wisdom, truth, and light. Humans faced a moral choice between order and chaos in a cosmic struggle. This Zoroastrian tradition entered the Hebrew world during a pivotal moment in 539 BCE. Cyrus the Great conquered Babylon and freed the Jewish exiles. If you've watched this channel before, you've likely heard me talk about the Babylonian Exile and the influence that it had on Hebrew mythology. I've also on this channel talked before about Cyrus the Great and the transition from the Persian Medes to the Achaemenid Empire. This is a moment where these stories intersect. Cyrus the Great and the Achaemenids were Zoroastrian. In the same way that the influence of Babylonian mythology was colored by the relationship with the Babylonian Empire, so was the influence of Zoroastrian mythology colored by the influence of those that brought it. We've talked at length on this channel about the serpent, how the serpent that brought wisdom to the Sumerians became flipped in the Hebrew Bible into a deceiver. But it is at this point that we acknowledge the teachings that came from the Zoroastrian religion. These include the omnipotent God character being a pillar for morality, a fundamental dualism between good and evil, establishing a god and anti-god, as well as the story of Revelation. If Zoroaster could be compared to any character from the Hebrew Bible, perhaps the best comparison is Abraham. They lived around the same time, and both represent a normal man, one of us who first heard the voice of God. It goes without saying that this date lines up with the breakdown of the bicameral mind. Christianity first entered Europe through the Roman Empire. It spread from the eastern Mediterranean across the empire's roads and cities. By the 4th century, it had become the official religion of Rome. The Western Roman Empire collapsed in the 5th century. Power vacuums opened across Gaul and beyond. Latin-speaking Gallo-Romans remained, but central authority had broken down. Into this vacuum moved the Franks, a Germanic tribe from across the Rhine. They gradually took control of what is now France. Think of a word in a Romance language like Italian or Spanish. I'll wait. So you've thought of a word. Okay, now say it as if it were a word in German. You see what you just did there? You just spoke French. Around 496 AD, the French king Clovis converted to Christianity. The Franks adopted Christianity as their official faith. By the late 8th century, Charlemagne, a descendant of the Frankish line, expanded the Christian realm aggressively. He crossed the Rhine eastward, conquered the still pagan Saxon tribes, and enforced conversion. Christianity spread as the unifying operating system of much of Western and Central Europe. The phoenix, from Egyptian mythology, is the legendary bird that is reborn from its own ashes. The Greeks assigned this symbol to the civilization of the Phoenicians, a society that was reborn from the ashes of the Bronze Age collapse. Humanity, as it seems, is locked into cycles of chaos, death, and rebirth. Another one of these revolutions began in Europe in the 1400s with the fracturing of European monotheism and the Protestant Reformation. The seeds of doubt were sown by institutional church corruption and the inaccessibility of Scripture. The outcome of this was a feeling of doubt that morality was the correct vehicle to arrive to the kingdom of heaven. In the 1600s, René Descartes set out to use the new language of the Enlightenment to formalize a proof for God's existence. What he arrived at was not morality, but rationality. The three primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. Try to think of a fourth one. Whenever I try to conceive of a new primary color, I always arrive at something close to skin tone, but of course this is a hybrid of reds, yellows, and blues. The fact of the matter is, we simply cannot conceive of a fourth primary color. René Descartes' base claim for his proof of God is that if something is truly inconceivable, it means it does not exist. But if something can be conceived of, then somewhere in the seeming infinity of our reality, it exists. Following from that, Descartes made the claim that because we are capable of processing perfection as a concept, perfection somewhere exists. It's not necessary for perfection to reveal itself to us and make its existence known. If something is perfect, it meets the definitional requirements to be God. Thus, God exists. Descartes' statement of incontrovertible rationalist truth, Cogito Ergo Sum, is a sentence made of two clauses. I think, therefore, I am. There are fundamentally two things happening at all times. There is me thinking and me being. The mechanism that connects these realms, represented by the therefore in that sentence, is the great philosophical problem of rationalists to this day, the hard problem of philosophy. But the fact that Descartes establishes these two realms, one of me thinking and one of me being, is why this statement is considered ground zero for Cartesian rationalism as well as Cartesian dualism. Dualism splits reality into two fundamentally different realms. The material world of bodies and objects follows mechanical laws. The mental or spiritual realm contains the mind, consciousness, and the soul. This is where felt experience and thinking take place. From the Cartesian perspective, the rational mind does not exist in the same realm as the body. Rather, it exists in the same realm as God. Rationalism holds that true certainty comes from clear reason inside the mind, not from the potentially deceptive senses. The rational mind can grasp fundamental truths on its own. These two ideas support each other. By placing the thinking self in a separate, non-physical realm, Descartes protects reason from the uncertainties of the body and outside world. Pure thought becomes the reliable foundation for knowledge. Undoubtedly, there is a type of intelligence that we share with our animal relatives, but it is a base intelligence, an intelligence born out of need for satiation and procreation. The rational mind represents higher intelligence, godlike intelligence. Descartes formalized this duality into two categories, not of truth, but of knowledge. The first type of knowledge is knowledge of things that have already happened. I know that this morning the sun rose. How do I know? Because I experienced it with my senses, and it is stored in my memory. This type of knowledge is called a posteriori. Posteriori, post, after the fact. This type of knowledge is not special, nor is it uniquely human. We share it with any animal that has both senses and memory. The second kind of knowledge is knowledge of things that are yet to come. I know that the sun rose this morning because I experienced it, and I remember it. But I also know that the sun will rise tomorrow morning. This is because I have experienced the sun rising multiple times at regular intervals, and I can deduce that the sun will rise again tomorrow. This type of knowledge is one where the superpower of the rational mind becomes a window into the future, and this is reserved only for us humans and gods. This type of knowledge is called a priori knowledge, knowledge prior to the fact. There is something divine about the a priori ability to see into the future. But it is at this stage that a new contender enters the ring, perhaps the titan of German philosophy, ready to stand up to French rationalism. His name is Immanuel Kant. Kant agreed with Descartes on the divine nature of a priori knowledge. But what Kant saw that Descartes did not is that the human animal, like all animals, is equipped with a priori knowledge from birth. He argued that the human mind is not a blank slate. Humans are born with built-in mental frameworks, space, time, causality. These a priori structures shape all experience from the start. Experience does not simply impress itself on the mind. The mind actively organizes it according to these innate categories. Now today, the intelligence of human biology is second nature. We know that memories are not only accrued through one's experience in life or given to us by gods, but memories are also passed down through features and archetypes via the evolutionary process. But when Kant published his Critique of Pure Reason, Charles Darwin was still just a small child, and the theory of evolution did not exist. In 1859, Darwin released On the Origin of the Species. Through careful observation during his voyage on the Beagle and years of study, he proposed that species change over time through natural selection, variation, competition, and inheritance drive the evolution of life, including human beings. It is impossible to overstate the magnitude of Darwin's theory, and nobody understood this better than one particular reader, a teenage boy in the late 1800s by the name of Friedrich Nietzsche. The tree that reaches heaven must have roots that go to hell. And in the late 1800s, tucked between the collectivist East and the individualist West, Friedrich Nietzsche planted that exact tree. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote, "Thus spoke Zarathustra," between 1883 and 1885. The book draws its central character from the ancient founder of Zoroastrianism. The story opens with Zarathustra leaving his mountain cave after 10 years of solitude. He descends to share his wisdom with humanity. He announces that God is dead. You're probably aware of a looming event in the space of AI that is called the singularity. This is a moment where artificial intelligence will be able to iterate on its own systems, and thus the need of the human will no longer exist. What needs to be understood is that before evolution existed in the shared consciousness, all living things were running static algorithms which had been written by our divine engineer God. What Nietzsche really announced when he said that God is dead is that the singularity had already occurred. In fact, it occurred at the beginning of all things. The human architecture is already self-improving. The most magnificent optimization process is already underway, and it's happening unconsciously. He saw the self not as a fixed rational core or a set of universal categories. The self is something that must be overcome. Values, morality, and consciousness itself are products of life's deeper drives. Where Kant described innate mental structures, Nietzsche saw dynamic processes. Where Descartes trusted the sovereign rational mind, Nietzsche called for the creation of new values beyond traditional frameworks. The Übermensch became the goal. 20th century academic Stephen Hicks argues that there are three humanist philosophies. The first is individualism, represented in its 20th century religion, the political philosophy of liberalism. The second is collectivism, represented in the religion of socialism. And the third humanist philosophy is what Hicks calls evolutionary humanism. This is the philosophy of Nietzsche, and through no fault of his own, the political movements that it would go on to inspire would be the darkest in all of human history. Friedrich Nietzsche's follow-up to Thus Spoke Zarathustra is a book called Beyond Good and Evil. In the preface to that book, Nietzsche makes a bold statement. He proclaims the importance of the philosophy on the pages within, but he also warns the reader to not even try and engage with the words he's written on the page, unless they are German. What if the great human project is generational? What if every successive generation is contributing to this great project with their blood? What if some people are meant to procreate for the benefit of the bloodline? What if others should not be entitled to this privilege? And it is here that we get into the murky waters of evolutionary humanism. You see, the Germans are a nationality, like all nationalities who can trace their history back to tribalism, who are profoundly shaped by their language and genealogy. And one must give Nietzsche his due. His brilliance is that he foresaw what we basically understand today to be archetypes, evolved elements of the psyche. Thus, Nietzsche is the champion of a philosophy that sits between the liberal West and collectivist East. In the 20th century, it was embraced along a line that separates liberal France, Britain, and America from the Soviet Union, in the countries of Germany and Italy. On the opposite side of the world, it separated the Pacific coast of the United States with what would become the People's Republic of China, in the nation of Japan. This philosophy and its politics have and continue to go by many names, but even without using one of those names, you probably know what I'm talking about. The great scars left by the 20th century tell the rest of that tale. But I would ask, why Zarathustra? Why the man who first heard the voice of God? And I think the answer is because Zarathustra did not hear anyone else's God. Zarathustra heard Zarathustra's God. And this signifies another interpretation of the Übermensch, a man who invents his own purpose. Nietzsche's Übermensch is not a biologically superior or a eugenic ideal. It is the individual who creates his own purpose in a world without given meaning. He affirms life fully, including its suffering and repetition. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, the solitary prophet descends from the mountain, yet calls humanity to a higher collective future. The path is individual, but the vision is shared. Self-overcoming serves something greater than the self. The long story of the self, from ancient projections onto gods, through monotheistic order and rational certainty to evolutionary disruption, ends here, not in nihilism, but in creation. And while the death of God may be a bitter pill to swallow, to the man who invents his own purpose belongs all the riches of this world and perhaps heaven. They are, after all, the same place. Thanks for watching.